Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Superwoman on our new digital TV channel F15. My name is Heidi Eichinger. I'm from the German language edition of Forbes, and on this broadcast, I'm talking to experienced leaders, founders, and executives who share lessons learned to increase diversity in their companies in order to be more productive, efficient, but also happy. Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Michaela Tod. Michaela is an expert in international leadership, innovation, and marketing. From July 2015 to February 2019, she was managing director and president Dyson China. But also from April 2018 to February 2019, she was president for the same company in the Greater China area. To give you, our viewers, a little idea about the size of this venture, we're talking about a turnover of just under 1 billion euros and 2,500 employees. How Michaela built up this market for Dyson will be the main topic of today's Superwoman episode. Welcome, Michaela. I'm very happy that you're here. Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
So we've already talked last week and you've already told me about your Dyson mission in China. And since I had the feeling of being in a kind of crash course on international management, I thought it could be a good idea to provide those insights and share them with our community. But before we continue with that, it would be perfect if you could tell us a little bit about the beginning of your international career. You are originally from Austria, but you're now living and working abroad for more than half your life, I guess. Please tell us a little bit about you.
I'm Austrian. I'm born in Mittersill, grew up in Salzburg and studied in Vienna, so very Austrian. I left straight after my studies. I hadn't even quite finished my studies. I met my then boyfriend, now husband, and he had this job offer in the Czech Republic, and I thought this sounded like a fabulous adventure, so off I went. And I've been a fairly happy, intrepid traveler ever since. I enjoy living in different places, and I've done so. So I've lived and worked in Central and Eastern Europe, and in the UK, of course, and then also in Asia.
And which industries have been involved?
I worked in advertising. So I started out in advertising actually a long time ago. Did that for a period of time. Then I took a break. Tried various things. I was in town council, very, very civic. And then I joined Dyson. Did Dyson for a long time. I was Dyson for 14 years. And now I'm in the media industry. So I've switched around quite a bit.
But how did you come to the Dyson company? I've heard that it was quite accidentally.
Yes, I'd stopped working in advertising, so I sort of decided now that this is not going to be it for a long time. I've done it enough, and his headhunter called me and said, oh, have a look at Dyson, and so I went there. I didn't know anything about the company, and it was an in-house agency job that really wasn't a dumb thing at the time. So it was like, oh God, this is career suicide. What am I doing? And I was struck by two things. I was struck firstly by just the pace of the place. People were sort of running around. It was very can-do. It just felt really, people just got shit done. It was very entrepreneurial, very fast. And the other thing is they had this new product they were working on. There was packaging. I remember that like yesterday. There's this packaging there, and I read the language on the packaging, and it was this sort of very, very sparse engineering language, and there was not a word too much. It was not copywritten. It didn't feel copywritten. It was totally authentic, and the product was beautiful, just this beautiful, simple industrial design. And I just thought I wanted to be part of that, and it was really like this. So completely accidental, but fell in love with it at the first interview.
But then you had it for China. How did this happen? With the brief that you had to build up the biggest Dyson market. So,
well, I'd been with Dyson for 10 years at that time, and I'd done roles in communications, in product development, and my last posting had been to Japan. So I did marketing in Japan. And China was at the time was tiny. It was 50 people. It's a tiny office, and we had this sort of toilet on a hallway with other offices. it's really a startup, right? And it's mostly a sales organization and break even. So yeah, it seemed like a massive brief, but actually, if you looked at it, it's this enormously dynamic market with a growing upper middle class that was adopting new habits and upgrading their consumption. And so conceptually, it wasn't an impossible brief at all, because you actually had a consumer group that was open and willing to premium products. And so while it was quite the challenge at the time, it wasn't a crazy challenge. So I felt like I could take it on. And so off I went.
Was there like kind of a special product with which you entered the market, or was it like the whole range of Dyson products at that time?
It was mostly floor care business at the time, and we had the range was a bit outdated. There was too much. There were too many cylinders. Cylinder products really don't work in China. So there was something about fixing the product first. The way the first thing with Dyson is always product, because the way that Dyson, every company has a way in which it creates value in the world, and that's how they make profit, right? So you create value in some sort, way, shape, or form, and Dyson creates value through innovation by shaking up marketplaces with it. So what do I mean with that? If you take Supersonic, let's take the hairdryer. What Dyson does is it completely rebuilds it, and not just pretty design and faddish stuff, but really rebuilds it and reinvents how the thing works, and then transforms something shitty and cheap, a 20 euro hairdryer, into the fabulous Supersonic, a 3,000 euro. And that's what the value creation is, and that's what the core of the profitability of the business is. So when you look at any Dyson business in market, the first thing you look at is you have to look at product, and do I have my lineup right, and do I have my pricing right? And not look at competition, because you're reinventing the market. So that's really a bit of a different thing. So what I did was I changed our stick range immediately. I just upgraded everything, and focused on the latest innovation, which is hugely important in the Chinese market as well, because they're very internationally literate, and you can't offer them all the product. Then the second thing you need to do is you need to then build that proposition around it. So you need to tell a story around it that makes sense, right? There's the product claims and there's the narrative around it. And the thing that I've always found worked best with products that are fundamentally different and that actually deliver something surprising and new to consumers is you need a narrative that reflects itself in the design of the product and in the sensory experience of the product. So if you tell somebody that your vacuum cleaner picks up more dust, and then people use it, and every time they use it, they see dust in a bin, then every time you reinforce the truth of your story with every use. Or if you tell people that the Supersonics got an amazing airflow because of the air amplifier, not only do you explain to people why it's got that funny hoop at the top, but you also make it real when you switch it on and this enormous airflow comes at you. So your story becomes really truthful, and that's your product story. And then you need to surround it with all the other elements that you need for super premium tech brands. So it needs to be reflected not just in your advertising and your PR, but you need to have beautiful shop-in-shops with fantastic displays and with demos and with demonstrators who are well-informed, and online chat services that are well-informed. So you need to build a whole ecosystem that reinforces your proposition and your story. And that's the core of the value creation on the market. Super proposition.
And that's why the consumers got the feeling that they need those products, because they are not very cheap, I guess. And
no, they're not
be part of that community.
Yes, you want to be part of that, and the really important thing is that you can't afford to disappoint at that price point, right? So the product can't afford to disappoint, the service can't afford to disappoint. So you just need to build this it's easy to talk about super premium. It's nice to charge a lot of money, but you need to be worth it, right? And so you need to be very, very choiceful about where you invest your money, where you spend your money, and make sure that it is very consumer focused and very future focused and innovation focused.
But how did you get to starting with 50 people and ending with 2,500 people in Asia? How did you do it?
Well, ultimately the product and the proposition, and if you put money behind it, if that's attractive, that gives you growth, right? But growth on its own, or revenue growth on its own, is not enough to grow a business, because you need to initially you need to keep a very keen eye on profitability, and you need to keep a very keen eye on where you spend your money. And we're going to come to that again in a minute. And then as you scale, you need to look at efficiency metrics, you need to look at your liquidity and so on and so on. So basically, super proposition is great, but you also need a business model that works. So you need to build a business model that is in line with your strategy, but that also needs to return money. The way that I found it easiest to think about profitability and actually align the team behind it, because it's really boring if you talk to somebody like, oh, we have to drive retailer margins down. It's dull, right? But if you actually say, well, look, our consumers pay, so you're a consumer and you pay 3,000 euros for Supersonic. Now you've got that price and then you've got my profit. There's a lot of things in the middle, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of subtractions. Now, what would a consumer be happy to actually pay money for? And what would he be quite shocked by? And I think that's a nice way of bringing it to life, because if I was a consumer, I could imagine, yeah, Dyson spends on research and development. That's okay. Yeah, okay. The actual build of the product, the money that went into the product itself. Yeah, you can spend on that because I spent a lot of money on it. I want it to be, well made. Even a beautiful shop-in-shop or a demonstrator service could be good, or even your marketing, because the image is, it adds to the image, it adds to the appeal of the product. What I wouldn't be happy to pay for is promotion spend. Why would I want to fund that somebody else can buy it more cheaply? So the way I brought it to life and I got people to focus on retailer margins and promo spend was through total consumer centricity, and just said, well, look, what would our consumers be happy to pay for? And so we focused from day one on how we go to market, retailer margins and promo spend, and we drove that down. So we drove retailer margins from 38% to 17% through retailer mix, and also just through renegotiating. And that meant we had more money, and that wasn't invested in individual price cuts that a retailer would be happy to do, because for them that makes sense, but it was invested in beautiful shops and beautiful service and aftercare. We gave more money back to the center for more upstream research, and that makes sense in the context of that business. And then, of course, as you scale, there's efficiency. You need to look at, then it gets a bit boring. You need to look at, inventory days and debtor days and all that. So, I mean, there's just the good practice of running a business.
But is this kind of strategy, like building up this business plan, is it a blueprint for any Dyson market, or is it especially, it did work out quite well in Asia?
Well, I think it is. I mean, Dyson China is the purest model of how we want to do it in the world, because of course we could build it from scratch, which is always much easier than if you come into an established business and you have to sort of transform it. And you can't one-to-one transpose, because say, for example, department stores and malls are really big in China. So people go shopping in malls. You can get small mall stores fitted out at a cost that is sensible in China. And so it was possible for me to do beautiful inline stores. If you were in Germany, that would be a bit more difficult, because it's quite, see, in China, you can focus on a couple of big city clusters, cover the rest with online, and that whole model works. You can't just take it and do the same thing. You have to take the sentiment of it and transpose it. So in Germany, I would focus on what are the promising outlets for electricals, and then maybe do shop-in-shops. So you do you have these cosmetic counters or something, and focus more on this. But you would still want to have a low retailer margin and reinvest that money in beautiful service. Because if you as a consumer come in, I don't want you to fund the promo for somebody else. What I want you to have is an experienced salesperson who could maybe even fix a product that you've got, etc., etc., etc. That's what you spend on.
Was it
transpose, not copy?
Okay. Was it important that also the not only the inventions but also the advertisement was made around the inventor himself, Mr. Dyson? Because I think this plays a major role probably in Europe. I don't know how the reception is in the Asian market.
I don't know whether it's important that he's in the ad itself, but I do think that origin stories matter. So origin stories, I think we're all authenticity hounds, right? And I think you can give, if your proposition is nothing but loads of product propositions, you sort of stand for tech, but there isn't real depth to it. So we spent quite a bit of effort behind the Dyson origin story. And the Dyson origin story, you can play that out in different things. So we ran engineering competitions in China with sort of Chinese engineers. They came around. It was called Mission to Mars, and you had these different young engineering teams, and they had to basically run through a fake innovation and manufacturing cycle and come up with some cardboard model. And I mean, you just try and bring sort of the spirit of Dyson to life. And we did tell a lot of the Dyson story because I think people want
it's inspiring.
Something that's true, right? And a
Yeah.
founder story in China does also have allure. So founders have a great image.
Yeah, yeah. Coming back on this Chinese market and the companies you built up there, how was it with the cultural clash? I mean, you're an expat, you're probably very used to it, but Asia is very special for any European or Westerner to say so.
I mean, the only way that I think you can really succeed because you're an outsider, right? The only way that you can succeed as an outsider in a foreign culture is to like it. It sounds really pat, but it's going to be invariably different. There's going to be things that you like better than at home and some that you don't like as much. And you just have to be curious about it and embrace it and love it. I think when I landed I'll give you a Japan and a China story. So when I landed in Japan is, people want to they hate to fail. They want to be 100% certain of what they do. There is a lot of preparation, a lot of analysis, a lot of pre-alignment before you get anything done. And that you need to accept. I mean, there's no point in just going, whoa, but this is so slow. It's just, that is the way it is, but you can speed it up. Now, if you want to speed it up, you need to understand. So my team are reluctant to do that because they really want to have everything perfect. They don't want to fail. So how do I get them to speed up a little bit, be a bit more happy to experiment and be a bit happier to maybe not have things 100% perfect? And the way you do that is you don't flip out if they're not 100% perfect. I mean, you just constantly encourage them and say, well, look, do it a bit quicker. It's okay if this is not perfect. So you just give them permission. China is totally different. So I landed in China and I fed like 3-4 ideas into a room of people and they all ran off and did shit. And damn, come back. I didn't want this because it's really fast, really entrepreneurial. And it's actually, everything's like a software development. People just go and try and test and do again. And there it was really about retaining that, but building learning loops into it, because it's very easy to get into constant experimentation and never spiral up, right? And because they're so fast, right? You just have to go, what did we learn? And then you just build these learning loops in. So I think just taking the good and the amazing of the culture, because every culture has got, I mean, it's one of the biggest privileges is to live in another country, to be welcomed by another culture, because it is a privilege to be welcomed by another culture, to really embrace that and to see the beauty of that culture and its people. And it's something that I've loved doing.
Is it something you only can learn on the ground, or is it something you can prepare for? Because there are a lot of like kind of intercultural trainings to you could book before going abroad and working abroad. Is there any advice you could give people who are actually thinking about working and living abroad at the time?
Meet people from another culture. I think it's the best way. Just meet up with people from that culture and be open to their differences and be non-judgmental about it. I mean, I think we all think that what's familiar is better, right? And what's familiar seems better, but it isn't. It's just different. And to be a bit more humble and just engage with people from another culture. So if I was to, I don't know, relocate to Kenya, I'd probably try and meet some Kenyans and try and figure out, just understand the people. For me, the Japanese and the Chinese were as different as, well, Chinese is, again, in and by itself, it's a continent, but they were as different as the Germans to the Italians. And it's just different. And so you need to just enjoy it with all the curiosity and tolerance you can muster.
You've mentioned it before. You've been working for Dyson in a total of 14 years.
Yes.
Have been living in Asia for a very long time, but then decided to go back to Europe. Why?
Well, our family home is in the UK. My husband's in the UK, and we could carry this off. We've been married for a very long time, but I was getting to a point where I just wanted to spend more time with him. And also my family's in Austria, and I felt it was about time to just see more of them. And so for me now is a little bit of time to reconnect and spend a bit more time with family, which I love. I mean, I loved being out there because, you know, my family came to visit, my husband came to visit many times, and we explored China, and that's all great. But I'm really enjoying living together. Funny enough now, because it's lockdown, so I've moved from an expat lifestyle to lockdown with my husband, and we haven't killed each other yet, so it's good.
Oh, that sounds nice.
We're enjoying it a lot.
But do you miss traveling and being in different cultures?
Yeah.
Or is it like you being in Great Britain is already a different culture in experience enough?
I'm certainly going to not just be in the UK. So that I know that.
But it's not gonna be Austria again, probably.
No, I just not because I'm fundamentally opposed. It's just it's a question of roles that are available, and you know what I could do. But I do know. I really loved being in Europe and actually going up the mountain with my aunt and visiting, you know, their mini chalet, you know, Hütte. and having a bit of Austrian lifestyle. I actually enjoyed that.
So I'm just looking on the watch. We are a little bit over time, but for last question, do you have any other tips for probably to be expats, like really for young people trying to build up their careers with options going abroad and working for a company on another continent, probably?
There are pros and cons for both. I mean, I think it needs to suit you. Some people are very, very happy to live in one place, and there is something wonderful about, you know, building roots and staying in one place, and that's great. I think it would be enriching, and I would recommend it to everybody to at least have one forum posting. I think it broadens the mind. My niece came and stayed with me in China for a couple of months, and I think it was a bit scary and a bit like ooh, and then she loved it. And I think it will give you a different sense of what it means to be foreign. I think the other thing is it will make you more tolerant. I leave you with one moment that I had in Winchester. I'd lived in Japan for a while, and in Japan, I'm a monstrous elephant, right? I mean, I'm big and I'm white, and I've got a huge nose, and I just look different, right? And I doodle along the road, and there's all these petite ladies that I feel like I have to watch out or I waltz over them. So I'm different, and I stick out all the time, right? I'm always different. You're in an elevator, and there's a little kid, and the kids will sort of look like that, and then they stare at you, and you're just different. And I was wondering about Winchester, and Winchester is this cute little town, and there was this teenager, African American teenager walking up the road, and I just thought, you know what, I know how you feel. It was just this moment where I was like, you don't know that, but I actually know how you feel, because you feel conspicuous all the time. And I think it just makes you a bit more. It just makes you a bit more, a bit less comfortable in your prejudices and a bit more open.
Probably. It does, because I'm used to it as well. No matter where I go, I just feel like it.
Because
sure.
And it's odd, right? And it's and if you haven't experienced it, you just don't know. And I don't think it didn't hurt me in Japan, but I think it's just it's a good life experience.
So, Michaela, thank you very, very much for your time and insights. It was a pleasure having you today. Thank you. And also, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining. I hope you had a good time as well. See you hopefully soon, same time, same place. Take very good care and bye. Thank you, Michaela.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.